It's finally happening. She is going to get changed. What are those changes? We've got a bunch of other changes. And is this the best communication that we're going to get from Second Dinner? Is this the type of communication you want? All of these and more, including card changes every single week. I don't know. Let's check this out. The folks at Second Dinner and Marvel Snap are giving us some balance updates. They had a fantastic post. I'm going to say that right now. It gave us a bunch of details, a bunch of why they're doing it, why they've done it certain ways, and things they're thinking about. I want to say before I start this that is great. I think communication like this should always be out there. It's the internet. I get it. We're always going to complain. But when you get stuff like this, at least makes most people feel a little bit better. So you've probably seen this by now, but they're planning on doing numerous changes to cards, including our friend Red Skull, and they're talking about Taskmaster and Shuri deck. We're going to go through these real quick. I won't read it word for word necessarily, but I love a lot of the stuff they've got in here. We've talked about these before, the OTA balance updates. These are the over-the-air ones. They had some issues with this before. This allows them to make some of these changes just sort of on the fly, and that ties into where they're going to do a number of these per week. This particular week, they're making 4 changes. You've probably already seen them and experienced them. It's sort of nuts. First one is Red Skull changed from 513 to 512. I still feel like this seems like not that much of a change. They want him to be decent on his own. We'll see if this changes much in the meta at all. He's still a good card. I like how he's playing here. Their comments here were on the previous patch notes they discussed. They adjusted Red Skull to weaken specifically his interactions with Shuri and Taskmaster, which I think we all sort of joked this doesn't really do much, and I still feel like it really doesn't do much. Their goal was to keep his strength otherwise flat or even slightly improved and see how things settled once they softened Thanos' grip on the meta game. And I have to admit, I have not seen a ton of Thanoses out there. Maybe it's just because of where I'm at in the ranking. I don't know. We know many players disagreed with that approach, and we're weighing that feedback as we continue to debate internally how aggressive our balance update should be. Now, I think that they should be careful with their aggressive updates. I know you can go one way or the other. I don't mind the creep. If you creep too many little things too much, then you don't get a sense of what's actually going to change and what needs to be fixed. That's the only caution that I have, that when we get to it, when they're talking about how many cards are going to change per week, if they just do little things all over the place, it's like, well, what really changed the meta? What really changed how everybody played? Which factor was it? So they admit they had an improved meta game, but the decks with Shuri and Taskmaster were still too strong for their liking. They recognize Shuri is clearly the true offender here, and they have a balance change for Shuri ready. However, that change to Shuri needs to be patch implemented, and they can't do it via OTA. So this is an interim adjustment to weaken the Shuri deck just a bit more. They do expect Shuri to remain viable after this Red Skull tweak, but they don't want to drastically nerf multiple quote-unquote innocent cards when they have an incoming nerf to Shuri herself. So that right there, Shuri is getting nerfed at the patch. It's happening. I think it's about 11 days away from shooting this video, which they'll say a little bit later. How do you feel about that? I mean, right as she's getting ready to pop into Series 3, I don't love that aspect of it. And I will say, if that becomes a pattern, I think it's going to be an issue with Second Dinner. I don't think people are going to like that. People are going to say they're just trying to feed the whales. They want the whales to have the best cards. And by the time they get to the free to play, then they don't have the good card either. I think Second Dinner's response to that's likely going to be like, well, a lot of times when we release cards, it sometimes takes us those first few months to figure out how good it is. Unfortunately, that's just sort of the nature of the beast. No matter how much QA, QC they do, how much testing they do, how much theorizing they do, sometimes you just can't see what the community is going to do with something. Now, I will say that, like the last update that we had with Red Skull is like, this is obviously not much of a change, folks, but I get it. I get what they're doing here. So I do like this approach. I think it's fantastic. They're just slightly adjusting Red Skull. And the truth is once they make this change to Shuri, if they need to adjust Red Skull back up, they can. Oddly enough, that's exactly what it says next. Once the Shuri changes live, will we revert this or previous Red Skull changes? Maybe, but we're going to give that some time because we'd rather ensure a larger shift in the metagame. I can appreciate that. The next change was Sunspot going from a 1-1 to a 1-0. When I first saw this, I was like, this doesn't feel like much. I still sort of feel that way. I mean, it's 1 power, and I think that is the thing that you want when you change a card. If you can change a card and still feel like, yeah, that's just as good, then that change should be required. It's like, that's perfect. You want all cards to be to the point where it's like, if you changed it one way or another, it might not be played. And that spot is the perfect spot. So it's Sunspot, they changed it one part. Like, yeah, I'd still play that. It's still solid. You might lose a point there, but it still feels pretty good. They comment here about how he's one of the most heavily played cards in the game. He's strong. He's in Series 2. I get it. They just want to get it so that he's a little bit weaker. I understand. Shadow King. Now, I like that they're looking at Shadow King here. I will say that I think they still need a little bit more changes with this guy to make him relevant, but this makes him a little bit more relevant for a potential play on turn 6 with another card. I think it would be awesome if Shadow King and Valkyrie could play together, but Valkyrie's 5 and there's really not a way to do that. I also think that Shadow King maybe should be an ongoing. On reveal, I don't know. I think if he's ongoing, people will love to have this card. They'll want to play it. It will be a huge tech card to adjust your opponent and keep them not being able to build up the points like they had planned. But that might be a little bit too strong, to be honest with you. If they made it ongoing, I might make this more like a 4-2 or a 4-1. But something to think about. Their comment here is Shadow King's whole purpose is to fight back against exactly the kind of things that Shuri's doing. But this card simply released too weak to be a consideration for most decks. We recognize his status as a Series 4 card that's used to answer more powerful decks rather than fuel them. Might limit his potential to impact the metagame. However, we're happy to give him the boost and see where things land from there. And again, I think this is a good boost to him. I don't think you're going to see him a lot more, but I think it's a great card to have to be able to sort of work on those Shuri double ups or, you know, the Bishops, the Angelas, the Hit Monkeys that you're going to see out there. But again, remember, this is not going to affect ongoing cards, similar to how Valkyrie does not affect ongoing cards. Sentry, this is an interesting change. They changed it from 4-8 to 4-10, and then Void would go from -8 to -10. I think that's fine. They talk about how he hasn't found a home. I'm not sure this is going to necessarily help him find a home. I mean, I think either way, whether it's 8 or 10, you're giving up one lane completely unless you've got a Viper that you can throw over there. If you want to use Viper with this, it's still pretty tough because that means on turn 5, you need a 3-2 play for her costing 2, or on turn 6, you need a 4-2 play. So I don't know if that's going to work great, but it's something you can think about for a sort of surprise late. But again, if somebody Cosmos or something like that, it's not going to happen. So those are the changes. We've got Sentry, Shadow King, Sunspot, and Red Skull, and we're expecting to get someone with Shuri here pretty soon. Looks like the reception here is pretty decent. Lots of thumbs up, some fires. 60 thumbs down. I mean, it's the internet. You're going to get what they're... Now, this is the part that I want to talk about quite a bit here, is because they talk about their balanced future and what they're going to do to sort of adjust the game moving forward. And I think this is really important. This first paragraph says that they're going to start making changes on the weekly basis, starting with their next patch, which is 4.18, which again, reminder, that means Shuri is getting changed 4.18. Also reminder, that's probably when we're going to get those series card drops that we talked about before, which include Shuri. So again, we're expecting Black Panther, Valkyrie, Super Skrull, Shuri, and Bass to all drop to Series 3 in April, and we're expecting MODOK, Ghost, and Stature to drop to Series 4. I am personally holding on to my reserves or my caches, all my boxes, until after that patch, so that if I happen to get a Series 4 opening, it's not going to be one of these that's about to drop to Series 3. I do not want that to happen. I would highly recommend you wait too. They go on to say that their patch will be every 4 weeks, and they'll continue to release on Tuesdays and include card updates as well. But the intervening weeks will each feature changes going live on Thursdays via that over-the-air. I think that's great. Expect a ton of changes per week. I think that's going to liven up the game a little bit. I think that's fantastic. I think we could see it where the meta might be slightly shifting one way or another based on some of these changes. It makes for some fun content, some excitement, some chatter about the game as well. They talked about they knew that this is the sort of thing we were looking for. They say thanks for the feedback. They go ahead and talk about some questions that are probably going to come up. They say why Thursdays? They say why not? And they say actually Thursday is a good day to slide into the rest of their schedule. My guess here is they want to get it on a Thursday. That way they have Friday before the weekend, so that hopefully they can all go home for the weekend like the rest of us humans like to be and not have to worry about any issues. What kind of changes will they make? Their OTA tool gives them the ability to make changes within about a week or two, but it is limited on what they can change. They're continuing to develop the tool and expand its limitations, but for now, we can all expect Thursday changes to be the numbers only like the above, with their larger patches still addressing most major changes to card functionality and visual graphics. I think that's fine. The sort of number changes back and forth where they can do things, it's good with me. Now, this is a big one. Will they be nerfing or buffing cards? I hear this way more than anything else that when I talk to folks is why not more buffs? Why not more buffs? Why do they constantly have to nerf? Why do they constantly have to nerf? Well, as you can see with Sentry and Shadow King, we do intend to buff cards through OTA. In fact, we're going to guarantee, they're guaranteeing us, do not forget this right here. Let's pin this video. They guarantee at least one buff in each of these updates. We will also use this method to balance the metagame with nerfs, but only when it's deemed necessary. So that means every week we should get at least one card that gets buffed. You heard it here. They said it. It's done, memorialized, okay? So we should hopefully get cards improving every week. How many cards will change each week? Our target is 2 to 4 each week. On patch weeks, it's possible we'll change more, as that's a unique access point for us. Now, I actually think 2 to 4 is high. If I were them, I would have said 1 to 3. But because I think, and we'll see. I hope to eat crow on this a little bit, but 2 to 4 cards changing every week. I mean, it's great for content, but I'm wondering about is that too much too quickly for game changes and shifting and understanding the meta and watching everybody do what they're going to do, because there's just so many different factors going on with location changes, hot locations, stuff like that, that I worry a little bit that this might be hard to pinpoint some of the problems sometimes. Maybe not, but we'll see. How will they pick the charges that they're going to change? They have a list of buffs and a very small list of nerfs, which is honestly interesting because we talk about why don't they always buff more? It's funny because they say they have a bunch of buffs and a small list of nerfs, which is interesting to me. I thought they would have more cards that they want to nerf, but maybe we're all just crazy here and it's just they've just been nerfing more than they wanted to because they needed to shift the meta harder through nerfs versus buffs. So that's what their plan is. They're prioritizing them based on how they expect the individual changes to affect the metagame or even combined with new cards and locations. But they'll shift them around based on the live metagame. I appreciate that. Why not just make all these changes now? One of the things they're weary of with balance patches is how much change is too much. That's what I was referencing earlier. They're avoiding changing more than a handful of cards at a time for a while now, and they think that's a good thing because they're easier to digest, and I agree with that. Plus, pacing out these changes lets them lightly freshen the metagame periodically. We talked about that too. It makes it feel better. Everybody's been complaining. It's the same, it's the same, it's the same, it's the same. Hopefully this changes a little bit more. Rather than shake it all up at once and then watch things settle into a new state of stasis. All right, I'm done with that. Now, this is the part that I want to say that makes me worry about this a little bit. This is going to cause the people who cannot get all the cards more frustration. This is going to be the biggest thing else. So everything else is great here, but what's going to happen is if they constantly change cards, that means it's going to be more critical to be able to have all the cards or most of the cards. And right now there is a huge card acquisition problem. So I predict that you're going to see more people complaining about not being able to have all these cards that are getting adjusted. Well, I don't have a Viper. I don't have, Sentry. I don't have Luke Cage, which is now, a must-have card. And I can't get it until the next month comes by because I only get one free per month and I can't buy Series 3 anymore. That I foresee as a potential problem with all of these tweaks. I think people are going to get frustrated there. So I think they need to be wary of that. How long are they going to do this? They've planned a trial period for May, and depending on how well it goes, they may continue onward, but they're optimistic about that at the moment. So they're going to do it for May. We'll see how it goes. I think it's a good test run, see how it feels. And then maybe what they'll do is they'll adjust. Maybe the 2 to 4 was too much. They'll say 1 to 3. Maybe they've decided, you know what? This makes it, like I just said, people are going to be super frustrated with not having all these cards more. So we've got to find a way to not do this until we can find ways to get people more cards or to catch up faster without dropping thousands of dollars. We'll see. Or maybe that's their plan. Maybe they want people to spend that. But I will say, having played a lot of mobile games, this is the most friendly cost game that I've seen out there since I've started playing games. Any gacha, any mobile, this is by far the most friendly. Now, again, I think the catch-up's too far. I think a lot of things are too expensive, but compared to the other ones, this one's actually pretty good. And I hope that they keep that in mind as they move forward, because I want the game to be about collecting. I want it to be about playing against all opponents, whether you're free to play or you're spending the most amount of money. And at the same time, I want those people who are spending money to feel like they're getting something in return, which, by the way, that's why I had that video out there saying, what else could they do to spend money? Cosmetics, cosmetics, cosmetics. Animations on super rare cards that cost a bunch of money. Those whales and krakens will go buy those. They will. And that way, that Wolverine, while it looks cooler, The free-to-play can still have a Wolverine and compete against the person who has the one that looks cooler. So that's it. That's the update. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think I'm on the money with this issue that's going to lead into card acquisition and people being frustrated? Are you upset that she's going to get changed? Do you think that's going to be a pattern? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you found any of this interesting, if you want to comment below, come to the Discord. Those links are in the description below. Consider hammering down that like button. Always appreciate that to help out the algorithm. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.